I've just returned from the London GT, where I had 5 fantastic games of 40k with my very silly 18 Centurions army. I'll tell you all about it properly in another video soon, but I wanted to talk about the massive, controversial, major drama that has grabbed the 40k community by the figurative balls and refused to let go until they're raw. Okay, so this isn't really that deep or controversial, but there is some debate going around about interpreting some rules and the concept of rules as written. In this particular case, the ruling differs from the UKTC, the largest UK event organisers, and the ruling from the major US event organisers, including the upcoming Las Vegas Open. Those who are semi-familiar, even somewhat, with the tournaments or competitive scene may know what I'm talking about, but for those who don't, this video will go through the issue, as well as going through rules as written versus rules as intended, and when not it's applicable. Hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a full understanding of the problems ambiguous wording can cause in a complex game like 40k, and also wonder why you even cared in the first place, because in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much of a problem. But to keep you enticed, I am going to give my hot take on the situation, which may get me yelled at in the comments more than building an old Gunpla did. I know there's a lot of people who don't play 40k, but who do watch my videos, so I'm going to break this down to the most basic language that most people could understand. I'm going to imagine like I'm trying to explain it to my parents, and, well, my parents sometimes watch these videos, so that actually might be useful for them. Hi, Mum and Dad. So let's talk about the Oath of Moment ruling for the Shadowmark Talon Detachment. I imagine if you don't play 40k, you understood maybe half of those words, so let me break this down. When you create a 40k army, after choosing what army you want to play, you also choose a detachment. Think of it like an underground train-based sandwich shop. You pick your bread, that's the army, then you pick your filling, that's the detachment, and then you choose your toppings and sauces, and that's the specific models or units you want to use. So your bread choice here is the Codex. It's a book that contains all the rules you need to play your chosen army. Army rules, detachment rules, unit profiles, etc, etc. You get access to an army rule that affects your entire army, as well as choosing a detachment rule that is more focused around a specific type of unit or playstyle based on your choices. Your detachment also gives you access to some other benefits, but for the sake of simplicity here, we're only really caring about the detachment rule. If, like me, you choose to play a Space Marines army, you would get the Space Marines Codex. With this, you would get access to the army rule, which is called Oath of Moment. Oath of Moment is this. At the start of your command phase, the start of your turn, basically, select one unit from your opponent's army. Until the start of your next command phase, the start of your next turn, that enemy unit is your Oath of Moment target. Each time a model with this ability makes an attack that targets your Oath of Moment target, you can re-roll the hit roll, and if you are using a Codex Space Marine detachment and your army does not include one or more units with the Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Deathwatch, or Space Wolves keyword, add 1 to the wound roll as well. You don't need to understand the inner workings of the game here. The long and short of it is you get 2 big benefits to help destroy one of your enemy's units. In particular here, +1 to wound is extremely strong. It's one of the best buffs you can get in the game. But what are all those other not Space Marine things that are mentioned? Blood Angels? Space Wolves? Paul, you said this was simple. The Space Marines are broken down into chapters. There are many chapters, but some are super special, unique chapters that have their own mini codexes with their own rules and units, and they are called Divergent chapters. These chapters that have their own mini codex include different detachments that aren't included in the main Space Marine one, but they don't have a full army rule that is different, so they continue to use the Space Marines Oath of Moment. If you use one of these detachments or any of their unique units, your Oath of Moment rule only gets to reroll the hit rolls. You do not get the +1 to wound. So you pick the Space Marine bread, but if you pick a fancy show-offy filling choice that costs extra, or top it with some weird stuff like, I don't know, baked beans or something, then you don't get that extra benefit. Sounds simple, right? Codex Space Marine detachments only, no fancy unique units, you get the better Oath of Moment. Not a problem. However, that rule didn't used to look like that. It used to just say that your army couldn't include units with those special keywords. So you could use a detachment from, say, the Blood Angels supplement, but as long as you didn't take any Blood Angels units, you got the +1 to wound buff. That wasn't the intention, so Games Workshop updated that to add the extra caveat. But wait, there's more. Games Workshop sometimes releases new detachments as downloadable extra content on their website. They did this for Christmas last year. It was called the Grotmas Detachments. There was one for basically every army, and they released a new Space Marine one called the Librarius Conclave. Despite on the website it saying Space Marines Librarius Conclave and the official app listing it under the Codex Space Marines section, some people argued that as it isn't in the actual physical codex, the Librarius Conclave doesn't get the better Oath of Moment because it isn't a Codex Space Marine detachment. It's a Grotmas detachment. It's on the menu with the rest of the regular fillings for the same price, but it's written on on a piece of paper and taped to the menu because they didn't want to have to make a whole new sign. So Games Workshop released an FAQ ruling that stated which detachments specifically benefit from Oath of Moment to ensure everyone knew exactly who gets the better version of the rule. Finally, the confusion is over. The sandwich shop has written on a sign outside that it says if you choose these specific fillings, they are this price. Despite them all being listed together and no normal person should get that confused, they clarified it. So nice, done, no more problems. Recently, though, Games Workshop released some new detachments, including Shadowmark Talon. Now, these detachments are listed under Codex Space Marines in the app, but rather than being listed as Space Marines Shadowmark Talon, it is listed as Raven Guard Shadowmark Talon. Raven Guard is another chapter, but they don't have their own mini Codex. It's fine. They're meant to be part of Codex Space Marines. Raven Guard, as a keyword, isn't listed in the excluded keywords from the main ruling, and they are under Codex Space Marines in the app. So they should get the buff Oath of Moment. Except, Games Workshop forgot to update the FAQ, which lists which specific detachments benefit from Oath of Moment. So technically, rules as written, Shadowmark Talon does not get access to the buff Oath of Moment. They wrote some new filling options on the same piece of paper that was taped to the menu, but forgot to update their outside sign. I believe in the US, tournaments such as the LVO have ruled that Shadowmark Talon and the other new detachments do get the benefit because they are listed as Codex Space Marines in the app. And the FAQ just hasn't been updated since March, so it was clearly a mistake. It was just an omission. Also, I believe I heard that someone spoke to Games Workshop themselves who told them this was the case, but I don't think there's any specific evidence of that, and I'm apparently not important enough for Games Workshop to reply to when I message their rules department, so that's up in the air. The UKTC, however, who run the London GT, strictly adhere to rules as written, and despite the FAQ being old, that doesn't mean it is suddenly invalid. Just because the sign outside was written 7 months ago doesn't mean it's any less relevant. FAQs are still in effect until superseded by a new FAQ update, so they ruled that Shadowmark Talon does not get the buff. And that decision would have massive impacts on the viability of this detachment, completely changing the result of the sudden lack of access to in this incredible buff, and caused my army list to go from a potentially tournament-winning masterpiece to completely unusable. Except it didn't really, because Shadowmark Talon Raven Guard lists still did very well, including a top 8 finish for one list that doesn't use quite as many centurions as I'd like. It did affect me a little bit in my games, but it was nothing game-changing. I lost my games through my own sheer incompetence. Thank you very much. Okay, but even though Shadowmark Talon is still good without the buff, the ruling has caused some controversy because it seems pretty obvious that these new detachments, like the Librarius Conclave, should get the buff Oath of Moment. And GW just forgot to update the nearly 7-month-old FAQ ruling they did because of a previous confusion for another thing they released. And whilst Shadowmark Talon is still great, this is more of an issue for the other newly released detachments, Forefather's Seekers and Emperor's Shield, which aren't nearly as strong and are now even weaker because they lose access to that very powerful Oath of Moment. I think everyone universally agrees that these detachments should get the buffed Oath of Moment, and it's just a miss from Games Workshop. But if you want to ensure that everyone is on the same page, you have to follow the letter of the law. You don't really have room to make judgments because everyone will have different interpretations. In this instance, it's a lack of updates leading to an ambiguous ruling. Perhaps Games Workshop does intend for these to be excluded and didn't update the FAQ deliberately. Even if someone did speak to Games Workshop, maybe that GW employee is wrong or uninformed. For most people, this isn't really that big of a deal. If you play in a local club or with friends, you can choose what to do. You can go with whatever interpretation you want. D&D is a good example here of being able to bend rules as written to benefit your table. No one allows the Peasant Railgun. Fortunately, there isn't a rank competitive D&D PvP that might have a meta dominated by 500 peasants passing a MagCase 2.0 over tabletop to each other, do like 1d6 damage at the speed of light. Wait, what? That's right, hurtling towards you at Mac Infinity is the MagCase 2.0 from tabletop.stronghold.com, the best way to keep your minis safe, secure, and easier to transport than ever before. Strong MDF and the power of magnets. You can ensure your minis will be unaffected even if they are propelled at lightning speeds directly into your skull. Right now, there's a massive 35% off in the full sale, but that ends soon, so go now to get great deals. As always, there is free shipping to the USA, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and most of the EU, and thank you Tabletop Stronghold for sponsoring once again. Go grab a MagCase 2.0 before the MagCase 2.0 grabs you. For big tournaments, I can see how the path of least resistance is usually best, so following rules as written puts the onus back to Games Workshop to clarify, which I think is probably the right call. Am I saying that the US tournaments are wrong to go against Raw in this instance? No, absolutely not. I can definitely see both ways of thinking here, and I don't think either the UKTC or the USTC, apologies, I don't know if there is a main Anyway, I don't think either of them are incorrect in their conclusions and the choices that they made. Games Workshop should be better at keeping track of their FAQs that might need changing and should be better at communicating their intentions clearly, even if that means adding some extra commentary to rules, because there's a few rules out there that are open to interpretation with the way they are written. We'll go through one of those in a moment, an oath of moment, if you will. No. We'll go through one of these ambiguous wordings in a moment, but I want to drop some truth bombs and deliver my hot take. I do think Games Workshop shoulder most of the blame. Most of the blame. But I also think that us as players need to take some responsibility here, and I honestly think the GW should be more assertive in shutting this shit down. Do you know how all this could have been avoided? When people were trying to be all, oh, but the librarian's detachment isn't in the Codex, so does it get oath? GW should have released an FAQ statement that said this. Of course it's not in the fucking book, you stupid fucking moron, because we're not going to reprint the entire fucking Codex for every fucking armory every time we release a new fucking detachment. It says Space Marines. It's under the app as Space Marines, and we're likely to release more fucking detachments in the future, so use your fucking brain. If it's under the Codex Space Marine section of the app, or the data state, or the points manual, it's fucking Codex Space Marines, and they get the better fucking oath. But instead, they acted like an exasperated but level-headed teacher, and that's bit them in the arse. They tried to make wording super specific to ensure they get the edge cases, but the problem with that is you make it so complicated that people try to read it and interpret it in different weird ways, which clearly aren't intended, but if you squint, they could be intended, and that's because people on the internet, and this isn't just a 40k issue, this is across basically every game with the rulebook, can't help themselves from trying to find loopholes. You can write the internal code of Ocarina of Time if you move weird, because people spent nearly 30 fucking years trying to systematically unmake reality to get to the credits slightly faster. You aren't going to win that battle by trying to make things more robust. That just gives people more things to break. Let's look at an example of this ambiguity within the words themselves, not just the lack of an update. It's Raven Guard again, this time with Athan Shan, the new chapter master, and this rule. Master of Shadows. In your command phase, select one unit from your opponent's army. Until the start of your next command phase, each time an Adeptus Astartes unit from your army declares a charge while it is within 12 inches of that enemy unit, you can re-roll the charge roll, but it must declare that enemy unit as the target of that charge, if possible. So the way this works is you pick an enemy unit. If you declare a charge when within 12 inches of that unit, you can re-roll the charge, but only if you are charging that unit. The reason it's written this way is, let's imagine that last clarification isn't there. Essentially, that becomes, if you're close to this enemy unit, you can re-roll charges against anything, when the rule is clearly a way of targeting a specific unit to get a bonus against. But some people instead are reading this as, if you are within 12 inches of that chosen unit, you have no choice and must charge that chosen unit, but at least you get to re-roll the charge. Even if you have a unit intending to go elsewhere, if it is within 12 inches of that unit, it must target it. Now, I can contest that that is a way of interpreting it, but let's really think about this for a second. If you could give a unit, your own unit, a buff that says, if you're within 12 inches of this unit, you must charge it, that would be one of the best buffs in the entire game. Why would a rule give your opponent that buff? But because of the way it's written to try and account for edge cases, people can try and interpret it that way. And to be clear, I don't know why this rule is written this way, because it feels like there's an easier way to do it, but I reckon this was Games Workshop's attempt at potentially curtailing people doing weird things with it, and it's backfired. I don't know why you don't just say, when you declare a charge against your chosen target, you can re-roll the charge roll. But there is probably some edge case where being less specific does cause problems, maybe with heroic intervention or something. Games Workshop just need to stop trying to be fancy and trying to work out each edge case. Just have either a very simple, plain English rule or put some extra commentary on it, like they have done before. If you, as a person, have ever said or written a comment about a rule which has started with, well, it could be interpreted like this, stop it. Get some help. It has the same energy as it doesn't say in the rules a dog can't play basketball. The game's complex enough, and trying to dance around and manipulate the English language into weird interpretations isn't helping. English is already a daft language. It doesn't need any more breaking. Just think about Games Workshop up in Nottingham right now. They're there with their rules team, writing rules to a game you're playing with your friends, and you try to read them, but you read them wrong, and you could have thought of a new way to play, but that thought you thought had an effect that affected you in such a profound manner in your manner that you start to hallucinate. You try to call to your friend, but the allusions to the illusions are too much to bear, communicating even the bare minimum about Sean Bean and the two bears you see by the sea is too much, but they subside, and you start to see, less Sean, and fewer bears, and as you return to reality, your mind wanders, and you wonder what that was all about. English is stupid. These are valid sentences in English. Don't think about it too hard. Recently, I saw a sign at a fast food place that was talking about their fries that said, no preservatives, hand cut. Obviously, we all know what they're trying to get across, but you could read that as there are preservatives in the fries, just those preservatives are not hand cut. The context is clear, but if you wanted to be unreasonably argumentative, you could read it differently. The reason this comes up in a game like 40k is that the reasonable interpretation with context means that one person is going to get an advantage, like Master of Shadows giving rerolls to charge. So people will try and nickel and dime out of giving the opponent that advantage. People will try and confuse matters by twisting the words in their favor. It's kind of pathetic, really. And to be clear here, whilst I think we as players can do our part to help by not trying to finagle interpretations from everything, GW is mostly at fault here, but I think it's a self-fulfilling downward spiral. Games Workshop trying to be more specific, which causes players more confusion, which requires more validation, which causes more confusion, and stuff getting missed, and these rules getting so stupidly written and complicated. It's all about communication. When we play games, communication is easy. It's cooperative. We help each other, even at the highest level. And if you don't believe me, go watch the London GT final. I clicked to a random spot of the final and immediately saw a great bit of sportsmanship where Liam basically went, oh, I can see those scourges. Move them a bit so I can't, because the intention was not to be seen. I've linked that section in the description. It's perfect. It's basically the best encapsulation of what playing by intent is. And this is from the two top people at the London GT, some of the best players in the world, being perfect role models and something you should aspire to be in your games, no matter what skill level. I would love if Games Workshop had faster clarifications on these things. It only takes one person to read the online discourse and go, we intended that the new detachment gets oath, this will be updated. But I also know that saying that will probably cause more issues, as not everyone will see it, and updating that and then translating it and having a proper FAQ and updating the app, all that costs time and money. I understand how pipelines and this kind of stuff works, but we need something to help not have players spin their wheels for months. But we as a community need to be better and not be unnecessarily vitriolic. If you wouldn't say it to someone standing across the table from you in a game, don't say it just because you're anonymous on a YouTube comment or Reddit. And if you would say the horrible shit you type in comments to people in person, fuck you! Say what you want about Games Workshop as a company. I'm not going to get into that. That doesn't matter. Company, business, it's fucking bullshit, right? But the rules writers themselves are people. Passionate people just like you and me who love the game. Are the rules writers going to be inclined to clarify things if they enter a room full of people who are angry, yelling, and throwing a tantrum over minute wording issues? Of course they aren't. If they entered a room to refined ladies and gentlemen politely discussing the rules, they might be more willing to come back and chat more and adjust their workflow to keep things more stable and have better turnaround on these mistakes, and maybe improve their wording with some proper feedback. Or maybe the rules writers are just evil bastards who are purposely creating ambiguity for their own entertainment. I don't see a ruling on that anywhere, so I guess that's open to interpretation. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, go like and subscribe, all the good YouTube stuff. And if you enjoy this a lot, then you can become a member or patron like all of these lovely people right here. You can support the channel by buying my merch, sharing it with people, hyping, all that nonsense, blah, 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 blah. I kind of haven't got anything else here. I didn't write anything in my script. I'm just going to keep rambling until I get bored and it's filled about 20 seconds because that's about the amount of time YouTube wants me to have these things for.